Wow. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Listen, I want you to right now, if you're just jumping on, I want you to invite. If
Right.
you're on YouTube, it doesn't matter. Am I right?
Yeah.
Hey, Sharice.
Hey.
Hey, listen, we missed you last week. It was, we decided to take
Yeah.
the holiday off.
Yes, we did.
And so we did. We took the holiday off. So what did you do for Thanksgiving?
I was in Atlanta for Thanksgiving.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. We won't. We won't talk about that. We'll talk about that later. I,
And
I'm,
how
I'm,
about you, Bishop?
I'm not going to be petty. I refuse to be petty. So we'll talk about that later. But it seems like you had a great time because you got this goofy smile on your face.
I had a great time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Me, you, and your relationship mentor, Pastor G, will
Yeah,
be having this conversation with you. Really, really, really. So I think we're trying to get her on next week. I think next week is her time.
it is.
Come on, yeah. So next week is relationship.
Yes,
So it's the holidays.
it's the holidays.
It's the holidays.
It is the holidays.
How you feeling?
Um, wow. This year is complete. I have a different feeling this year than any other year that I've had. I'm more at peace. I have a joy in spite of the pandemic. And it's like I'm at ease. I don't have this anxiety that I would normally have and depression. It's a good, in spite of everything. It's really, I feel good. I feel good.
Awesome.
How about
What do
you?
you think is the difference this year for you? I mean, well, it may be some good reasons.
Well, yeah, definitely some good reasons, but if that was never a reason, I think the difference is I put the work in. I made a decision to not allow the holidays to dictate my mood, or the lack of family, the lack of Christmas spirit, the lack of that support that I think people look for, or the festivities that people look for from their loved ones. I did not allow it to dictate my mood this year like it would normally do. So in the past, I would be so depressed during the holidays. Like right after Halloween, I would get really depressed, almost suicidal. And it was for years. I would want, my mom is deceased. My dad has always been in and out of my life. And I only have one child. And of course, being a single mother, that, my daughter has a great father. So her going over there and me being by myself, that loneliness would kick in, and really the enemy would really have a field day in my mind. This year I decided I'm not playing those games. So whatever he brought, whatever he came with, I was ready to fight. And I think going through COVID-19, saying to myself, I'm gonna say this. When COVID-19 happened, I had to take a hard look at who I was. And when I took a hard look at who I was, there were things that I loved about me, but there were a lot of things I did not like. And I said, Lord, if I die today, if COVID-19 hit me and I die today, I don't want to die like this. I want to grow. And I made up in my mind that all those things that I would make me sad, or all the things that I took for granted, all of the things that I would look at, that the lack versus what I had, I decided to focus on all things good. And that's what really changed my mindset this year. And when I begin to focus on all things good, that is what I begin to attract in my life. All things good.
It's interesting. As we kind of jump in tonight, I will admit that I am so committed to having a great holiday.
Yeah.
I am so committed to having a great Christmas, and I'm so looking forward to all of the things that come with this holiday.
Yeah.
And so as you and I would, just kind of looking at our topic for tonight, it just dawned on us that we really needed to tackle this whole holiday blues thing.
Yeah.
Because it's legit. And so one of the great things God has done in this pandemic for me is allowed me to expand my relationships, both professional, personal, to create, connection with some people, men and women who God is really doing some amazing things with. And when when the Lord gave us the vision of Seminary on Sundays, I was amazed at the type of person that registered. And one of the persons who registered, who's actually a member of one of my dearest friends in the world, Dr. William Curtis's church. She's also she presented at Dr. Jerry Carter's How Shall They Hear conference. She's an amazing woman from all indications. And so tonight, to walk us through managing the holiday blues, we have Dr. Tanya Tinsley. And so, woo, Dr. Tanya Tinsley, yay! And so we're really, really excited to have you with us tonight on Nightcap. Tell us who you are, because I think you can better introduce yourself to us than me. Tell us who you are.
Absolutely. I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm in private practice, and I'm also, in addition to a licensed professional counselor in private practice, I am the clinical director of the Mount Airy Counseling Center in Mount Airy Baptist Church. I would also say I'm a scholar practitioner. So I have, for the past 15 years, been teaching and training counselors at various universities and engaging in research and integrating spiritual and Christian perspectives in the counseling process, multicultural and social justice issues in the counseling process. And my other specialty is sports counseling and working with the athlete population.
Wow, that's called busy.
Wow.
That's called busy. So we're gonna jump right in. One of the great things of being married to the person I'm married to is that we have healthy conversations. Sometimes conversations are pretty tough, but we have healthy conversations, and we've kind of created that space where we can tell the truth about how we're feeling. Sometimes it's good days, bad days. I think the holidays, however, bring a really different kind of emotion. I think this whole pandemic itself. So what is the holiday blues? I mean, we hear that all the time. Sharice just kind of, gave us a portrait of where probably more are this year than have ever been. So Dr. Tinsley, help us. What are the holiday blues?
Absolutely. First, let me just say the blues. We all get the blues here and there. Okay, the blues are being sad. The blues are being lonely, worried about the past, worried about the future. The holiday blues, the National Alliance of Mental Illness gives us this definition that they are temporary feelings of anxiety or depression during the holidays that can be associated with extra stress, unrealistic expectations, or even memories that accompany the seasons. And so memories of the past or worries about what it's going to be like in the future. So the way to think about it with holiday is just so much about the past and what the past was. That can increase depression. If somebody's worried about what's my life going to be like in the future, that can increase anxiety. So when we're talking about the holiday blues, it's temporary depression, anxiety, feeling lonely, isolation, sadness, tension, frustration, and could be fatigued and tired.
Wow. Wow. I think so many people are right on all five of those that you list, anxiety, depression, loneliness, isolation, especially now that COVID cases are rising and there's a possible rumor of another shutdown and quarantine. You know, I think some this season are afraid of maybe even dying alone. You know what I mean? And so with all of that, how do you begin the first step of even overcome, like trying to wrap your mind around being positive about the holidays?
Well, you know, it's real interesting. As I was listening to your story when we first started, I wrote down reframing and changing how you're thinking. And that's what you did. You reframed how it was last year. You changed your thinking about what it was going to be like for you this year. And I think that's one of the first steps is people have to recognize how they're thinking. People have to recognize if they're engaging in this negative thinking, we call it stinking thinking, and reframing. We can't change what's happened in the past. We right now don't know what's going to happen in the future. So really staying in the here and now and trying to be present and trying to find the positives and thinking positive in the here and now.
Wow.
Mr.
Guns, your mic is on.
And many times when we do this, that is just unnecessary, right? What are you know, you mentioned some causes, but can you go into some more detail as to what are some of the causes of this? I mean, what is it that really triggers this? Because
that's good.
You know, I guess that's the best question I can ask right now. What really triggers this?
That's a great question. And triggers can be both positive and negative. Triggers could be growing up having unhealthy Christmas holidays or holiday seasons where there's family dissension or trauma could trigger it around the holiday seasons, but also grief and loss. Grief and loss of a person, a lifestyle, and that can trigger it. So whenever there are situations from the past, whether I'm around lots of family and this year I'm by myself, and that can trigger and activate those feelings and the holiday blues, but also who am I today compared to what I was last year? So this whole identity can trigger it as well. So dealing with grief and loss from a person, grief and loss from a lifestyle, a way of living, trauma could trigger it, unhealthy situations and context from the past can trigger that. Oftentimes we think of holidays are supposed to be fun, and but that's not the way it is for everyone. And that's hard when the commercials start coming on in October around Halloween for Christmas. That's when people start to feel those feelings of, the dread of coming up to the holidays because they're not happy for everyone.
Wow. So then it's almost like you have a desire for or an expectation of how you envision your holidays to go. And then the reality is, based on your situation, you may not be able to fulfill that desire. Absolutely. And then something happens and it triggers the emotion. Some would go so far deep into it. As a healthcare professional, I see many people around this time of year, anti-anxiety medicines become very highly prescribed, antipsychotics. And most people they're fine the first 8 months of the year. And you know, they come off of their medication and then around the end of the year, it's picking back up. How can someone break that cycle, you know, that expectation, that desire, knowing that you have no control if these expectations or desires are going to be fulfilled, because ultimately they're in God's hands? You know, how do you break that mental cycle? Because some don't know how to make a decision to change their mind. What practices do they need to put in place?
great question, and just kind of a great overview. You talked about these expectations that people have and then where they're at. So there's a gap between where they're at and these expectations. And that gap is what triggers the anxiety and depression. So I think one of the things we have to recognize, is it just the holiday blues that someone is experiencing? Or is it a serious mental illness? Are they diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety? And the holidays can trigger those feelings for whether it's just the holiday blues or a serious mental illness. The difference, it really lies in how long they last. So, we say the holiday blues, that's temporary, couple days, a couple weeks. But if the holiday blues are accompanied by not sleeping or sleeping too much, trouble eating too much, not eating at all, if there's these thoughts of hopelessness, suicidal ideations, that's where it becomes serious. People have to understand, whether it's the holiday blues or a serious mental illness, it's not a quick fix. So, for the first half of the year, people might be doing well, but that is a time to plan for how you're going to manage the latter part of the year. Oftentimes people think, oh, I just need to start preparing when I start feeling it. But that's where you have to work harder and be more intentional. And it may be that you can't do it all alone, because we know we're designed to be in relationship. So if all of a sudden around October 31st, you start seeing Christmas commercials and you're having the feeling, that means that's when you have to roll up your sleeve, be intentional, and come up with strategies in your toolbox. And it might be in conjunction with someone else to be able to manage the last 3 or 4 months of the year. But it's not a quick fix.
I'm listening, and it's interesting. For us as people of color, we've always attached a stigma to therapy or counseling or certain types of medication. And then when you add being a person of color who has been reared and raised in the climate and culture and context of faith, what are you starting to notice about us as a people? Wow. What are you starting to notice about the way we're starting? Yeah. What are some of the trends as relates to people of color and mental health?
Well, let me say this. When it comes, we all have mental health. We all have to work on being healthy, whole, and our own wellness. Okay. We can have situations that impact our wellness, can impact our mental health. When we talk about mental illness, here's a couple things we have to think about. Mental illness is an illness. So it would be no different if we had a physical illness, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. We would have to take medication for those physical illnesses. When it comes to a mental illness, that just means that there is something going on with the brain and the chemical imbalance that that's just out of your control, and the medication is there to help the balance in the brain. So I'll say these words, it's very technical. The serotonin manages the mood. We have dopamine that manages people's motivation. When there is a decrease in serotonin and dopamine and it impacts the neurotransmitters, that's what's increasing the anxiety and the depression. And then if somebody's experiencing lots of stress, see, right now during this pandemic, it's really, think about it as, people are experiencing a double whammy. There's financial stress, there's social stress, because we're talking about this physical distancing, but it's impacting relationships, people's jobs. And then you add the holiday blues, that's a lot of stress. Stress releases cortisol in our brains. Excessive cortisol is going to impact that dopamine and serotonin. So anybody who's dealing with anxiety or depression can live a healthy, happy lifestyle, but they may have to take medication. And when we talk about Black, Indigenous, people of color, there have been stigmas. We know about how research has harmed us. We know that there are medical practitioners that may not be the most multicultural competent or social justice competent. So one of the things we have to do is we have to continue to educate those of us in the church, those of us who look like us on mental health and mental illness, to ask the questions of their doctor so that they can go armed with information and have clarification. What questions should I be asking about my mental health? What questions should I be asking about medication? But what I will say, this year, when the pandemic hit and we started having to quarantine in March, I have found that there have been more churches and more Black, Indigenous, and people of color being open to mental health counseling and seeking therapy. Mental illness is an equal opportunity illness. It does not discriminate based on denomination, religion, race, gender. And so, the statistics say 1 in 5 people have a diagnosable mental illness. So if we can continue to educate people that it's not a bad thing and that you can still live a healthy lifestyle with support, you can manage the holiday blues, you can manage the anxiety and the depression.
Wow. I want to ask a question because our people, we're taught, pray, go to church, the Lord will take care of it all.
Right.
And research has taught us that, yes, prayer is an essential part of it. But as you mentioned, there are some neuroreceptors and transmitters, all the stuff you just mentioned, that plays a major role in the imbalance.
Right.
I guess this question may be for Bishop and for you. Bishop, as a pastor and bishop, and you hear this, how can one incorporate their spiritual growth and their mental growth, understanding that they're synonymous? They both play a major part in the deliverance process when it comes to fighting holiday blues.
Well, I think first of all, the whole Dolomite and Dolomine, you guys are way too smart for me. Way too smart for me. I'm sitting here like in over my head. I'm gonna change my label from let's enjoy the journey to the dumbest one on the panel. I get it. It's interesting. I think as I've gone through the years, I've become more appreciative of the importance of the theory of therapy. And truthfully, I engage in a genre of preaching that is known as therapeutic preaching. Because I firmly believe that the spiritual health of a person is tied to their emotional stability and their emotional well-being. And it's tied to the courage to sometimes honestly, openly deal with the issues of insecurity, our fears, those tendencies to kind of drift into dark places, closet issues that sometimes our faith or our messaging says, we're made to feel so bad about being flawed, and yet we're told to enjoy grace. And so I've become more sensitive to the fact that I need to do better as a pastor. So I no longer badger or bludgeon people who are going through certain things. And I understand that we need the Dr. Tanya Tinsleys as much as we need the Bishop John Guns or the Dr. William Curtises. Because at the end of the day, a healthy person needs to understand and know God, but knowing God also involves you being emotionally open and available. And if we create a place where you feel uncomfortable being that, then I think that even hinders and inhibits your pursuit of intimacy with God.
Wow.
I don't know if that made any sense or not, but yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, because some will say if you are a person of faith and then and you have to have counseling, then you don't have faith. You lack faith. And I know that's not, the Bible talks about being counseled, but understanding that you need wise counsel.
Sure.
I think that as a millennial, how can we be okay with counseling, because our parent didn't do it. And then now we're told it's okay, but a lot of us don't want to admit that we do it. How can we be okay with like where it's normalized and not shunned upon? I guess is what I'm asking.
Right. I guess I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Bishop Gums said, but also bring in my pastor, Dr. William Curtis, because one of the things that we've really tried to do is marry theology with psychology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we really talk about, if we think about throughout Scripture, especially in the New Testament, in John 5, John 9, there's this idea of, wilt thou be made whole? Do you want to be well? Well, whole, that comes from this Greek word sozo. And sozo is connected with shalom. And shalom is holistic, total health. So if we're going to rely on Scripture, wilt thou be whole is not just spiritual transformation. It's physical transformation. It's transformation of the mind, right? And so we have to understand that we need to be made whole. And to do that, we got to focus on mind, body, spirit. Also, when we talk about the man at the pool and Jesus said, get up and walk, we have to be willing to be intentional and work towards our health, right? And so we don't have to carry those patterns of behavior in the past. We can be intentional and being different today and focusing on the health. And we can be different today to understand that when we talk about in the body of Christ, we have people that have different gifts of counseling, right? And so we have medical professionals, mental health professionals that are a part of the body of Christ. And we have to help people to understand that it has nothing to do with you not praying hard enough or your faith. Once you transform your mind, that's going to transform your faith. And so if you need some help with your mind to be transformed, to be made whole, you might need somebody that you're in community with to help you to do that.
That's good.
It's interesting, and this is kind of opening up some real thought for me, because transparently, as I've gone through this time, one of the things that has been helpful for me has been that I've felt safe to be honest. Even if I needed to be honest with my wife or honest with my friends. I mean, I think of, the men in my life, my brothers who I've been able to be honest with. How many people, Dr. Tinsley, well, not how many people, where in the holiday blues, when people are feeling the need to be dishonest, where we feel like, we need to act happy for people or behave like right now, I'm thinking about so many pastors who are coming up into this holiday, and there's so much uncertainty for a lot of pastors. We don't know who our members are anymore. We don't know if the doors will open, and if they do open, what that looks like. And then we're trying to be holiday happy.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much uncertainty. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense.
It does.
How do we manage this dishonesty that so many of us live in this kind of season?
So, as I'm listening to you, there was two things I'm thinking. The first thing is, as human beings, we all wear a mask. So the question I would say is, who are you when you take off the mask?
Literally.
And when you take off that mask, can you be honest about who you are? Can you be your true, genuine self? And the question is, who do you need to be around to be your true, genuine self?
That's
Who
big.
in that safe place can you take that mask off and be your true, genuine self? Because here's the thing, we all have emotions. We all go through those negative emotions, those negative thoughts, but if you suppress those emotions, that's going to start to impact your health. See, there's a word, Bishop Guns, it's called psychosomatic. Whatever's going on emotionally is going to manifest itself in a person's body. So if you're not honest with yourself, the back aches, the stomach aches, the headaches, the GI system, the GI issues that you're having that the doctors can't find a cause for is coming from your emotions. And if you can't be honest, you're going to continue to have the physical ailments, right? When you suppress those emotions, it's increasing you having chronic health issues. So part of it is if Jesus is asking us, wilt thou be made whole? That means being honest with yourself. To get the appropriate help to be able to transform who you are, mind, body, and spirit, and transform your faith.
Okay. I got to jump in here, Sharice, because I see something in your eyes. So, how does someone break the pattern of emotional dishonesty?
Wow.
Because what's deep to me, everything you just said makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's deep to me is sometimes I think the world that we live in makes us feel that not telling the emotional truth is strength.
That's good.
And absorbing it and taking it is a statement of strength. Or we get to the point where we no longer feel like we can be honest with the people that we choose to stay in relationship with.
That's good.
You know, it's almost like I choose to still be married to you, or I choose for you to still be my friend, but I can't say to you, this bothers me, or this hurts me, or I'm afraid, or I'm uncertain. And we find ourselves in suppress. How do we break that pattern? Because so many of us, I'm guilty, so many of us live in this reality of not always feeling as if truth is rewarded, that sometimes truth is punished.
Right. There's so many different ways I could answer that. So first of all, I'll start with, I have this saying that there's 4 C's to healthy relationships: effective communication, the ability to resolve conflict resolution, compassion and empathy, and commitment to the process. The first step to be able to have effective relationships with other people is to have a healthy relationship with self. So part of that healthy relationship is being able to communicate those hurts, those pains, the way of thinking, resolve the conflict with self. Change. So, and change doesn't happen overnight. Change is a process. To kind of say it takes 30 or 40 days to form a new habit if you're working on that habit every single day. So if you are working on changing your way of thinking and expressing yourself and communicating with yourself, you got to do that every day for 30 days. It takes 60 days for it to be consistent. But what happens is people will start working hard for the first few days and then they'll have a relapse. And we have to get people to be consistent in that process, but know that change takes time. Change is not going to always feel good, but that's when you know it's working for your good. When you are strengthening that relationship with self and being honest with self. And I tell people, start the process with journaling. Write your thoughts down and be honest with yourself in the journal. Right? You know, have your conversation with God, and it's just the two of you, but being honest. And when you can start getting it out in a journal, then maybe take the next step and talking to somebody who's a trained professional, because those of us who are trained professionals, we're bound by our ethics and legal requirements that everything we're talking about is confidential. I think that's really important, that when somebody comes into my office, it's confidential unless I'm concerned about them harming themselves or harming somebody else. But being able to have some real honest dialogue with self and then expand that to with a trained professional.
Wow. You muted Miss Bishop.
Sorry, I'm muted because I don't want to hear. I don't want y'all to hear me grunting back here. So yeah. Wow. Okay, Sharice.
So I mean, that's the problem. I want to go back to something, and then I want to ask you a question about being honest with self.
Okay.
Faith.
What'd you say?
Bishop used the word safe.
Oh, safe. Yep.
That's a trigger when you don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Example, when your relationships don't feel safe, your finances don't feel safe, your health don't feel safe, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not about the people in your space. Just feeling safe altogether triggers this emotion of holiday blues, right? Mm-hmm. So because you don't feel safe in any of those areas, if someone asks you how you're doing, you'll say, I'm great. Mm-hmm. I'm wonderful. Mm-hmm. Because you don't feel safe. And so the truth of the matter, we have this saying, fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. I think that's a dangerous statement for someone that is not emotionally intelligent. Mm-hmm. Or someone that is too ambitious with with lack of discernment, right? It can be dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so self-awareness is something that most of us lack. We can see everybody in the room but ourselves, and having those tough conversations with ourselves tend to not happen. Okay. If you don't trust your voice for yourself, who can someone, I guess, lean to? And this is where I'm kind of bringing it, lean to kind of help them navigate and manage that self-reflection. Because I'm going to tell you, I know a lot of people don't self-reflect. I know a lot of people are not honest with themselves about how they feel because they're so used to putting on, right? So if you can't be honest with yourself, who can someone go to? Where can they go to get that?
Right. And that's where I think a trusted practitioner and building a therapeutic relationship with somebody you trust. And let me go back to what you were saying, feeling safe. Because I think it's two ways. Because when it comes to communication, it's giving the information, but also receiving. There's often times where I've heard people say, I don't think people can handle the truth of how I'm feeling. So I'll just tell them I'm doing good. Because the recipient may not know how to respond. If you ask me how I'm doing, you're expecting me to say I'm good. But if I say, oh, I'm having a bad day, woe is me, that person may not know how to respond and may not allow the people to own the feelings. Because I think one of the things we have to get to a place is to own feelings and not get stuck in them. And being able to be with a trusted professional to learn how to own them, and being with a trusted professional that's just going to allow you to feel, and being a safe place, maybe not having an answer all the time, but you just being able to get it out. Think about it, my metaphor that I like to use, most people have heard me use this metaphor. Think about a Pepsi bottle. You shake that Pepsi bottle. I'm shook because of the pandemic. I'm shook because I can't go with my family for Thanksgiving. I'm shook because I can't travel. What happens when you take that lid off? That Pepsi top, it's going to explode, right? But I don't know if you all remember when we were kids, if you ever did those science projects, you put a Pepsi bottle in the freezer, mm-hmm. or you leave cans of pop in the car, it's going to explode anyway. So either what a person's being shook, financial stressors, career, job stressors, relational stressors, it's either going to explode on somebody or it's going to explode on self and cause health problems internally, cause self-esteem issues.
Yes, God.
So we got to help people to, when I open a Pepsi bottle, I turn the lid lightly just to let some of the air out. We got to allow people to have a safe place to let the air out and not be judged, because people need to make sure that I'm not being judged and that it's okay for me to feel this way that I'm feeling right now.
It's interesting. I'm getting some texts from some members, and it's interesting reading them.
Wow.
This kind of conversation opens the floodgates emotionally for people. You create these moments, and people like I'm reading some of the comments in the chat, and all of a sudden you hear these conversations, and we hear this professional, and you're challenging us, and you're stretching us. I mean, I'm listening, and I mean very transparently, I've had a pretty good season. I mean, I'm pretty happy. I'm not, but I've been the Pepsi bottle.
Right.
Yes.
And it's weird. Your example is deep to me, because not only is it in the hot car, but if you put it in the freezer, the coldness has the same effect. So some people are cold, and they shut themselves off. And they become cold, and they become indifferent, and that coldness and that indifference. I had a friend, and I was really close to this guy, and my greatest fear for him was, and sometimes is, that he goes and hides in the freezer. So wow. And I have to go find him. I have to go text him and call him and say, hey, where you been?
Right.
And so help us, help, okay, holiday blues. Help all of us listening and who will listen, because I think so many people are going to ask their family and friends to watch this. What is it that we have to do to not fall victim to the blues, to the point that it either puts us in the freezer, or or we lock the car door and we become angry, and I'll say this, and you can answer the question, because the other piece is that sometimes our anger is that we're disappointed at people's inability to know what we want the holidays to look like.
Right.
That's good.
And I'll admit it. I mean, I haven't, I'm trying this year. I even put ornaments on the tree this year, didn't I bet? My wife said over there, like, nah, yeah, okay, I'm not in this, right? I've made a decision that because my wife can do that. I made a decision this year. We putting lights up, and we're yes. And so how do we? Yeah, I say a lot of stuff, and I don't always know, Tanya, if it makes sense. So I'm gonna throw it back to you, because you're the professional, right. And yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Let me first say this. I think people need to recognize you don't have to suffer in silence.
That's good.
You do not have to suffer in silence. And do you have somebody like you, Bishop, comes to your friend when you know that they're going into the freezer? You're there to help them. So who do you have in your life that could be that person that you can be honest to say, hey, if you haven't heard from me in a couple days, would you just please check on me? And so we're designed to be in relationships. So having a buddy system. You mentioned the word expectations, and we used expectations earlier on. When you have expectations up here, but people have already been performing here, you're going to be bound to be let down. So part of this process is setting reasonable expectations, setting healthy boundaries, right? And I like to say it this way: meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. You might want them to be here and in this way of the holiday, but that's not how they've been. So meet them where they are, not where you want them to be. And that will help with setting those reasonable expectations, having healthy boundaries. But again, you don't have to suffer in silence, and you don't have to suffer alone. I always say, give yourself temporary distractions. Okay. Yes, I don't want you to get stuck in these negative feelings and these emotions. So you're going to have to say, you know what? I'm going to be like this for the next 2 hours, but in 2 hours, I'm going to go and watch a movie on Netflix. So give yourself temporary distractions so you're not always in the negative mood. Give yourself temporary distractions from the dread, and try to extend the length that you do that, so that then all of a sudden now you don't realize you're in that stinking thinking mood again. And part of the process is know the difference between taking time from yourself versus isolation. It is okay to take time from yourself and have some quiet time, but don't isolate yourself.
Someone has a question, Dr. Tinsley, and they just put it on the screen. What do you do when your person is no longer here? What do you do when your person took their own life?
My God.
Right. And that's a great question. And when that person is no longer here, one, recognize that you're still grieving. There is no timeline on grief. And the holidays can trigger you going back to those different stages of grief. So the theory I like to use is Kubler-Ross's stages of grief: shock and denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. And part of it is understanding you move in and out of those emotions. And you may be at a good place, and then all of a sudden the holiday brings you back to anger or depression or shock and denial. Really? Did they take their life? They're not here. But honor those emotions. But the question might be then, who could be another support system? And right now, if there's not somebody you can identify, could it be a trained professional so you don't have to go through that grief by yourself?
That's good. I think that it becomes, prime example. The other day I was feeling so overwhelmed. And sometimes, because I can be very deep, just spiritual, and so my feelings oftentimes in self-reflection, sometimes I've done something and the Lord will remind me, or something will happen to me and the Lord will remind me of a situation, and it'll make me feel a certain type of way. So, I have a friend, my best friend, I typically call her because she's a really great listener. And this particular day, I felt so overwhelmed. And so I text her because I had one of those moments that if she really knew how I felt or what was really happening, is she going to judge me? Now, she has not a judgment bone in her body when it comes to me because she basically knows everything. But I had that moment. And a lot of the what made me feel overwhelmed is the fact that my mother's not here. And my mother's been gone since I was 18 years old. Okay. And so there are moments where it hits, and it hits major, that grief during the holidays when your loved ones are no longer here and you desire them, is something that can be unshakable if you don't have the right tools and strategies or people in place to manage. And because sometimes when you're grieving, you don't want to keep singing the sad song, especially when people can't relate to that grief. Like, I lost my mom, her mom is here. So there's a part of her that has some empathy and some sympathy, but she can't necessarily, it doesn't hit her that way. You don't want to keep bringing it up every year, at some point you say to yourself, okay, you got to be strong enough to handle this. And maybe this is a question for myself. Is that a healthy perception of, okay, Sharice, it's been over 10 years. You should be better at managing this grief, at 10 years than you were at 8 years or 7 years. Is that a realistic expectation? Is it putting too much pressure on myself? Like I'm on the couch right now.
Well, here's what I would say. First of all, in all of my training, I have not seen anything that said there's a timeline on grief. So first of all, I would say give yourself a little grace, because there are times throughout the year that you may feel better than others, and that it may be the holidays that is triggering. That's the activating event to bring you back to those emotions of when you first experienced those loss. And so you could get flooded with those same emotions again. So one, I would say, be patient with the process and know that what you are experiencing are normal reactions to this extraordinary event of losing your mother, right?
Right.
Here's what happens too, because when you had said, I wanted to text my friend, but I was wondering if she would judge me, but you said you knew she didn't have this judgment. Here's what happens when a person is triggered or activated. If we come from a cognitive behavioral perspective, the first thought is to start thinking negative. Oh, they're going to judge me. Oh, maybe I shouldn't text them. Or it's all these shoulds or musts or coulds, these irrational thinking. I always say, pay attention to those activating events, pay attention to how you're thinking, and don't always believe what you think. So don't believe that thought that she's going to judge you, but then you went back and you disputed it. No, that she doesn't have that. So whenever you find yourself thinking negative, one, try not to believe it. And two, try to find evidence that's going to support it. And if you don't have evidence, dispute it, right? Because realistically, from a cognitive behavior perspective, how you think is going to impact your emotions and how you behave. So if you can reframe your thinking back to where we were at the beginning, reframe your thinking, you can have more power and control over managing your emotions and your behavior.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Someone made a statement. Everyone can't afford a trusted a trusted professional. So we've got 7 minutes left. What is your advice for coping with this in a healthy way? And then we have a statement from the person who offered who said that their person was taken. Her sister took her life 3 months ago, and now she's taking care of her boys. She hasn't been able to grieve because she keeps telling herself she has to be strong for the boys. But today was the first day she started thinking about suicide.
My Lord.
And she says, I'm doing the same thing, not wanting to reach out to anyone. So, wow. We're going to pray for her before we go, but I think that this is kind of one of those moments when God kind of brings someone out of the shadow, and by bringing them out of the shadow, they are asking for help. So, Dr. Tinsley, how would you respond to Sister Green tonight?
First of all, I would say your life is worth it, and by no means would I want you to take your life, and that's me, and I'll own that. So the next step is to get you to believe that you are worth it and you are of value, and those boys are of value, and you're dealing with quite a bit right now. And you not having time to grieve because you've been trying to be strong is what has been triggering that Pepsi bottle exploding. And so your Pepsi bottle is exploding. So I would recommend, here's one thing I will say. Because of this pandemic, it has opened up professional counselors, therapists, licensed professionals to provide counseling through telehealth. So you don't have to physically go someplace. And there are counselors who are doing pro bono, doing sliding fee scale, where you can still be in the comfort of your home, but also engaging in telehealth counseling. So I would say, in addition to us praying for you tonight, we need to see about finding you somebody that you can talk to via telehealth to be able to release and get some comfort.
My Lord.
What I want to be able to do is we're going to put our church's we create a hotline number. We're going to put it up here. And if you're someone who needs who feels like you need professional counseling or help, what I want to do tonight is I want you to call that number and leave your information, and then we're going to work to find someone who can provide you with what you need. And I'm going to ask Dr. Tinsley to give us some recommendations of some services that may be out there that can provide assistance. And I'll be very transparent as someone who now understands the value of this, the value of these kinds of conversations, but the value of the services that are available. We want to be able to create that. And so the number, and if someone could just put it in the chat, the number is 904-394-6090. 904-394-6090. And right now, if you will take down that number, and then between today and tomorrow, call it, leave us your name and your number. The first thing is, and I agree with Dr. Tinsley, we're not going to give up on you. And so if there's anything that we can conceivably do to help you, we're going to do that. And so I would love to continue this conversation because I think this conversation needs to be had, not just tonight, but maybe next week or the week following. And Sharice just put a number in. Please text the crisis line as well, 741-741. All right. And so there are services out there. There are places to go. Dr. Tanya, would you give us kind of that last word tonight? And can you come back before the holiday season is over? Maybe I know next week, we're doing our relationship piece, but maybe can you come back the following Wednesday? And we can kind of keep digging and maybe come back with some strategies and some plans. Other people and Sharice just dropped in the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There are a lot of services available. We're going to fight for you. So we've got a minute left. You have the last word, but you'll be back in 2 weeks. So
I'm just going to reiterate what I said earlier. You don't have to suffer in silence, and you don't have to suffer alone. I am a true believer that what we did tonight by having this conversation, it was not by accident. You have 3 of us that are right here that are available to guide you. And also just know that utilizing the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the crisis text line, you can be up at 3 a.m. and if you need somebody to talk to, you can contact them. It's free, it's confidential, at least to have somebody to talk to, in addition to calling the church's lifeline. Just know that you do not have to go through this process alone.
We will be back next week. And Sharice, I think we've tapped into something.
Yes.
You two are amazing women, and I appreciate you so much. It is now 10:30, so I will pray and we will close. Okay, Father, in the name of Jesus, for every person who watched tonight or will watch, and this has triggered something and pricked something, may healing begin, and may the pathway to healing cause them to seek out the help they need. May no one suffer alone. and may no one choose to live in isolation. Help us now to manage the holiday blues and give us all we need. Thank you for this amazing woman of God who gave her time tonight to help us be better. Thank you for my partner as we do the work that we're called to do through Nightcap. In Jesus' name, amen. Everybody, have a great night, and we will see you all next week. Cherise, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, there we go.